Maybe your child is not speaking clearly. Maybe your child is not yet using words and language with confidence. Today, we're going to be talking about some different ways that you can incorporate speech therapy practice all throughout your daily routine in a variety of places and while doing a variety of things. It's kind of interesting to think about, but speech therapy can be incidental, kind of like homeschooling. You can learn in a variety of different ways, and sometimes the best learning that you can do, which should come as no surprise to you as a homeschool mom, the best learning you can do comes while you're doing regular everyday life, because that generalization, that connection to real life, helps them use those skills in a variety of contexts, whether at home or somewhere else, inside or outside, while at work or at play. That can create a very multifaceted skill. Hopefully today you will learn at least one thing that kind of stretches your imagination of ideas of where and how you can practice your speech therapy. My name is Amanda Owens, and I am a speech language pathologist licensed in Indiana, Florida, and probably by the time this workshop airs, Texas and Pennsylvania as well. I have some others that I am hoping to get licensed as well, but I am also nationally certified with my clinical or certificate of clinical competency by the American Speech and Hearing Association as well. So this is what I do for a living. Speech therapy is what I do for my day. And I have done it in a wide variety of settings. I've done it in hospitals. I've done it out in the community. I've done speech therapy in public schools, Christian schools, and with a lot of different homeschool families from different states. I have worked with itty bitty babies that are 4 days old, all the way to adults who are 104, about to turn 105, and everywhere in between. Speech therapy is so incredibly diverse because you can work on speech sounds, you can work on language, you can work on reading, you can work on swallowing and feeding and picky eating and all those different things. But one of the cool things about it is because it is a therapy, it is incredibly individualizable. It's built for homeschooling, and homeschooling is built for it. Good speech therapy and homeschooling just click so nicely. So homeschooling, my passion for homeschooling comes from the fact that I'm a homeschool graduate. I'm sure you could tell by my awkwardness and my lack of eye gaze. I hope you feel like we're just talking to each other right now, because I want this to be incredibly conversational for you. Feel free to pop it in the comments below. I'd love your feedback. And I'd love to see if there's any other mamas out there who are homeschooled as well and are doing this as a next generation kind of thing. I'd also love to meet any of you mamas who are worried about homeschooling. You maybe are thinking about homeschooling, or you're fresh and new to homeschooling and you're concerned about it because you're wondering about how can I do these other things, because hopefully both of y'all are going to learn something really amazing today. Homeschooling and speech therapy, like I shared, they connect. They can be incredibly organically intertwined. And hopefully during this workshop, you're going to learn a few ways to do just that. So when you're trying to teach your child to talk clearly, to talk confidently, to use words fluently, one of the first things you might think about, besides what should I do, is where should I do it? Where am I going to find resources? And how structured does this have to be? Does it have to be speech therapy? and exist in this kind of separate box in our lives, because that is incredibly inconvenient. Wouldn't it be incredibly inconvenient to kind of just be like, well, this is the speech therapy part of our lives. We're going to drive off to our clinic. We're going to do speech therapy, and then we're going to go home. We might sit down. We might have a worksheet. We might do our speech therapy thing, and it's just going to live in its little speech therapy bubble. But when you do that, not only is it terribly inconvenient, but you get less generalization of that skill to other things. And if a child is doing fairly well with their worksheets, if they're doing fairly well with that drill where they're learning to do their sounds, or in those very specific situations at home where they're learning to use their words more confidently, to be able to use the words that they need when they need them to express what they want or what they need, it could stay in that little box, which doesn't really serve them in a really functional way. I mean, when we think about academics as homeschoolers, we don't just leave it in the container of school. We think about how school applies to the rest of life. And because of that, I think we are more open to incidental learning. So I would like to encourage you to consider the possibility of incidental speech therapy that can be done in a wide variety of places, a wide variety of environments, which won't just make it more convenient, but will also make those skills spread to a lot of different places as well, so that they can speak clearly and confidently anywhere, anytime they go. One of the first places people look for resources in this century is online. You can find tremendous amounts of things online for speech therapy, whether it's materials to practice, instructional videos, resources to connect to a professional to support you and help you. A lot of people, type things into a search and see what they can find. Looking for things online can be an incredible tool, but it can also be incredibly overwhelming, which is why sometimes it is nice to have a buddy to point you in a specific direction or distill information for you or give you what you actually need to know instead of all this extra busy work that you may not need to know. But some of my favorite places to look for information for, say, speech sounds, YouTube. There are so many instructional videos on YouTube. There are so many apps like Articulation Station is a fun one. There are so many neat websites and blogs. Mommy Speech Therapy or Home Speech Home. There are so many great lists of words there. And honestly, I use them myself as a speech language pathologist anywhere I'm working. Whether I'm working at school, whether I'm working in my own private practice, Illuminate, Communicate, I use those websites all the time. Now, what I would encourage you to do is find a couple reliable ones and dig into them for a little while, because sometimes when you try a whole bunch of different things, because it's a whole huge world of resources, you can get bogged down and overwhelmed, and then you aren't as consistent. So when you're going online, try to filter it a little bit. Try to start small and apply what you see right away. See if it works. If it doesn't, try something different. If it does, keep at it, because consistency can be key. One of the things I also encourage is when you're looking at those amazing lists like Mommy Speech Therapy, Home Speech Home. Home Speech Home might be my favorite because I love their lists. They're just so easily organized, so searchable. Something to keep in mind is when we're practicing, we need 5 to 6 different words that have different vowel contexts when we're learning a new sound. If you try to sit down with an entire long list, you might find yourself failing more than succeeding, just because there's so much diversity in the motor programming and the mental programming for those lists, because there's so much contrast and difference and other things that you can get distracted by when you're learning a new sound that's kind of tricky, that you might not see as much success. So like I said, when you're doing online, make sure to filter. Also, you can find some things offline as well. One of my favorite literacy finds So for phonological awareness, there is an intensive phonological awareness program that you can get in book form off of Amazon for $40 that was written by like 3 different speech language pathologists who have a focus in literacy. Pretty cool, huh? There's different books. You can meet with your speech language pathologist in person, or I guess online as well, like people do with me. There's so many different options, whether online or offline. Kind of start thinking about all the different ways you can use those tools, whether offline or online, to see and meet your needs. Maybe it's just because I had a booth right next to the wonderful podcast, 1,000 Hours Outside, with Miss Jenny Urick. But have you, and this is not endorsed by her way, she's this total fangirl moment. She's amazing. And watching her kids operate in her booth was pretty cool. But you can do speech therapy outside. In the last day, I have seen 3 of my sweet friends that I see in person outside. I've seen them outside because here the weather has been beautiful. So why wouldn't I? I've done sessions in people's homes before where we go outside and we pop bubbles outside, or Miss Amanda will even get her swimsuit on and we'll go playing in a sprinkler because if that's what the family's doing, that's what we're doing. And we're learning how to say words, ready, set, go. Oh no, so wet, with confidence and excitement and true natural playtime joy. Or, we're working on sounds maybe on the slide or on the swing where they climb up the slide and they have to wait, slide. And as soon as they hit that magical lift for that sound, they get to go right down that side. Win! And the context brings so much joy. You get to be outside when it's pretty, which makes you feel like you're not doing work. Like total win, right? Hopefully that's incredibly encouraging to them as well and keeps them motivated so your child wants to do more, because repetitions are pretty key. You want 60 to 150 repetitions each day, especially if you can get them into a shorter space, because it creates a certain level of intensity that they need in order to learn a new sound, for instance. You can also do it inside. Rainy day, bring out the sensory play. Sit down at the table with a worksheet if that's something that's helpful. Maybe you're doing reading and you know that you have a special cozy chair where your child will read and imitate you, make comments about what they see in the pictures, and it just gets them regulated and centered. Outside or inside, there's no wrong way about it. Another way you can get out there and do your speech therapy in a wide variety of settings, you can do it while working or playing. A lot of times we think speech therapy has to be done as dedicated speech therapy time, or sometimes, we open up that box a little bit and we do play-based speech therapy. But one of my favorite things to teach mamas, because we're all so busy, we have so many things that you're doing. You're doing school, you're cleaning and uptaking your house, you're taking kids everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. And you just have so many responsibilities and other things to do. So wouldn't it be something if you could work on your speech therapy while you're doing other things? I have a child who has speech sound delays because of a fabulous lip tie that we're not able to remediate just yet because of age and the severity. And we work on lip closure for the b and p and sounds while we're doing dishes together. It sounds counterproductive, but for my 3-year-old is incredibly helpful because my sweet baby loves being next to me. I have to get the dishes done. And when the bubbles are there, she's a very captive audience. And so we sit there, I'm washing and scrubbing, my mouth is busy, and my hands are busy. and it works out just fine. Think about how many good, deep conversations you've had while keeping your hands busy, while doing something else. Speech therapy can work the same way. As long as you keep it simple, you keep it repetitive, you keep it focused on just one task, it can work out really, really well. You can think about the one sound that you would like to work on. You can think about the one sentence structure. Like, I see bubbles. I see bubbles in this sink. I see water. I see water in this sink. And then see if your little one will imitate you and try to point out the things that they see as well while they're learning the different structures of language and putting words together into sentences. There's so many different ways to do it, but you can do it while working without guilt-free. This is your guilt-free coupon. Don't feel guilty folding laundry and doing speech therapy at the same time. Don't feel guilty working and doing speech therapy at the same time. If your hands can be busy and your mouth can be focused and your brain can be focused on your child, how is that different from any other part of your life, right? You can do that with speech therapy as well. Playing. I know we kind of touched on it earlier because play-based therapy is something that really is sweeping everywhere, which it should because it's so incredibly developmentally appropriate. I know a lot of homeschool families choose to homeschool because they know that sometimes, that kindergarten, first, second, and third grade education might not be quite developmentally appropriate. They're sitting in very, very static ways. They are worksheeting it up. And they're not getting breaks. They're not getting movement. They're not getting that diversity of experience and that play-based learning experience, which really can not only kindle a further love of learning, but also stick around more and really produce in it such a foundational and concrete knowledge, besides all the other reasons why it's just plain awesome. Homeschooling can definitely offer that. And speech therapy can have that similar flexibility and play-centric kind of learning. One of my favorite things to do with the family is teach them about play-based speech therapy, because it's not just letting your child play, it's changing your portion of the environment and allowing them to bounce off of it in such ways that no matter whether or not they realize they're participating or not, they get benefit from it. The best speech therapy does not feel like speech therapy. That is the stuff that sticks. That is the stuff that lasts. Think about, making that volcano with your group of kiddos. My group of kiddos, my sweet kiddos at home, we just got a telescope from the library and opened it up and are going to play with it. We are going to explore it. We're going to explore the stars. We're talking about planets. So cool, right? But it has that feeling of play instead of busy work or academic learning that has hoops to go through and hurdles to jump just to say that you did. Everything has a purpose, whether it's joy or learning. And when you put the two together, joy and learning instead of busy work or assessment, which assessment is important. Obviously, I'm a speech language pathologist. I assess all the time and it's incredibly, incredibly key. But it gives them time to let things simmer in that natural, very organic, very incidental learning kind of way. And that will stick with them for longer. So I just love it. Play-based learning is the bee's knees, and you can do things with that in so many different ways, whether playing with them with a toy and doing narration, modeling, and recasting, expansion, where you say something, they say something, and then you say back what they said, but better. And they just naturally learn from that process, changing the amount of questions you use while you guys are sitting there playing kitchen. Is that a taco? Is that hot sauce? Yes, yes, yes. They answer yes, yes, yes. But all of a sudden you go, it's speech therapy time. We're playing taco stand. But today I have my speech therapy brain on. Instead of asking wonderful parenting questions, because good parents ask questions, instead today I am going to use my speech therapy techniques, and I'm going to say, whoa, that's a taco. Ooh, you're putting hot sauce on your taco, and you're modeling all that good, much more complicated language in a way that is super imitatable for that toddler, for that young child, etc. So whether work or play, tons of different ways that you can work with your child. Last one, DIY or with help. I sometimes surprise people by sharing that I really truly believe there are some things that you can DIY. There are some things that you can DIY. THF, those two sounds, man, there are so many times where I've given a family just a couple pointers on that. Maybe they've visited my Facebook group or one of my freebie things, and they just latched onto something. Oh, Peachy Speechy. They use Peachy Speechy, speaking of another wonderful online resource. And they got that information from it. And they ran with it, and their kiddo just blossomed, and it clicked, and it was perfect. It was exactly what they needed. Why not DIY that? Absolutely. Why not DIY that? Give it a shot. See what happens. At the very least, even if it doesn't work, if you give it a try for, a few weeks, maybe a month or two, depending on if your child's younger or older. Obviously older, there is a critical period where you start running out of time. For real great neural plasticity change, because the brain becomes less flexible as you get older. But give it a little bit of a shot. Give it a real, genuine, consistent shot. And at the very least, you might have excellent data to pass on to the professional of your choice to say, hey, we tried this and this is what happened. And that can not only be helpful for your speech language pathologist if they're a smart cookie and they know to listen to you, but it can also create a precedence for a relationship with them where you are somebody who gets in there and does hard work. You are willing to learn to help your child. You are willing to work with your child one-on-one, and you are a person that can be a colleague, an equal party with that speech language pathologist, which just creates such a great environment for collaboration for the person that you both care about, your child. So I just DIY, even if it feels like it wasn't a success. There can still be some amazing good things from it. And for sometimes it just works awesome. And then if you need help, it's okay to get help. It's okay. I think a lot of times as homeschoolers, we can be so beautifully independent. But sometimes it's nice to have a sounding board. And sometimes if it's something that is under a very specific wheelhouse, it is beneficial to have somebody who has worked with over 500 families. I tell folks I lost count after 500. Eventually, I might try to estimate, like once I hit another mile marker, like 1,000 or something. But when you've seen so many different variations, and you've seen so many different techniques, and you've seen what works, what doesn't, what to do if one thing doesn't work, but another thing does work, but you still need help on another thing, when you get to pull from that box of tools, it can be incredibly helpful, and it can cut down on the time that it takes. And sometimes it's absolutely what is needed in order for a change to happen. I see it myself. And I also work with another speech language pathologist, just as a colleague, as a good friend, who has an absolute passion for homeschoolers like I do. And both of us were talking one day about how sometimes we see families that fear that they have come too late because they waited or they tried DIY and they got some success, but not as much as they were hoping for. And sometimes those families are discouraged. Sometimes those families are a little a little scared that maybe they waited or they did the wrong thing. And that can kind of create this worry that maybe do I want to ask for help? Will they judge me? Will they think that I haven't been a good parent because I didn't come straight to, a professional? But I think you will find that if you found a good one, they're just glad you're there. They're totally glad you're there. And they, like that other SLP and I were discussing, we want you to be encouraged that there is still hope. We have seen adults change speech sound patterns. Absolutely. So even if, you have a preteen or a teenager or a young adult who is struggling with their speech sounds, there's still opportunity for change. It gets less and less as it goes older. It gets harder as it gets older, but sometimes the older ones work harder. I even see some adults for speech sound concern because either the public school or they themselves kind of had to give up on sounding clear. Then now they're working on it now. And I hope that gives you hope that there are speech language pathologists out there who would be absolutely stoked to work with you in a collaborative sense to support you and to help you learn the tools you need to work with your child. There are some speech language pathologists, just kind of segueing, there's some speech language pathologists who like to keep speech therapy in a bit of a box. They like to work just with your child and then tell you how things went. But if you can find somebody who's collaborative, that might suit your homeschool vibe a little bit more. And honestly, I'm meeting more and more of them as time goes by. So I really, really would encourage you to get to know a couple speech language pathologists and see who's a good fit for you. And so as we've learned, there are a wide variety of places and ways you can incorporate speech therapy into your life. I know that there weren't tons of specific examples just because speech therapy is so wide. And when you're working on your child's speech sounds or your child's ability to use words confidently, there's going to be so much individuality on what they specifically need in order to talk clearly, in order to speak confidently. They're going to have different techniques that they need. But I hope what you've gained from this workshop is kind of an outside the box way of thinking, so that when you go looking for those specific techniques for your child, when you work with a speech language pathologist to develop those specific techniques for your child to truly individualize, I hope that it gives you a certain flexibility, a certain freedom that is guilt-free about incorporating speech therapy into your school life, into your everyday life, whether it's inside or outside, working or playing, DIY or with help, or offline or online. As we're wrapping up this workshop, I wanted to first thank you. Thank you for equipping yourself, for investing in yourself, so that you have more tools, maybe a little bit more perspective to reach your goals of helping your child to talk more clearly or to use their language more confidently. I really appreciate it. And I hope that this workshop was helpful to give you some more ideas of where you can look for resources. Oftentimes we reach for those go-tos, those things that are kind of like our default mode, like Googling, how do I look for speech therapy help? But once we start taking the time to look at things and kind of thinking outside of the box, which as homeschoolers, you do really well, we start making the speech therapy so much more than individual little activities or programs or even speech therapy sessions with an awesome speech language pathologist that really connects with you. Instead, Instead, or in addition to it, it becomes something much more, because it becomes that incidental learning. It becomes organic. It becomes functional to their everyday life, and you get more bang for your buck that way. You see more progress. You see more success. Something that you see with school and homeschool, how when you don't compartmentalize and you take every opportunity to do learning, they just blossom and grow. It's something that you see probably every day. If you need to reach me in the future, please feel free to email me directly at amanda@illuminatecommunicate.com. Just a refresher, I'm Amanda Owens. I'm a speech language pathologist, certified across the United States, but licensed in Indiana and Florida. And I also should have Texas and Pennsylvania by the time this airs, if not another location as well. But even if you're in a state that I don't currently serve with direct speech therapy services at this time, feel free to connect with me. I would love to hear your thoughts on this workshop. I'd love to hear what you would like to hear about next. And I would love, love, love to have the opportunity to maybe direct you to another resource. As a speech language pathologist, it is literally part of our code of ethics for me to connect you with other people that might be able to help you within your state. So it would be my great joy to do that via email. You can also check me out at my website, www.illuminatecommunicate.com. I look forward to being in touch with you in the future. I hope this workshop was helpful. Thank you, and enjoy this amazing summit that continues to please, even though this original workshop is for the second year, only the second year of this summit. I hope that you are incredibly pleased with your experience, but honestly, I expect nothing less. So give a huge round of applause when you're done with this workshop in the Facebook groups. It'll be our little surprise to Miss Ritchie, and thank her and the rest of her team for putting together workshops like this, where she has collated resources that are for all learners and supporting all moms through their homeschool journey in a way that is accessible and fun. So again, I hope you enjoy the rest of your summit, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future.